Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here?
Test, test. Now this works. Test, test. Now it works. Okay. I have no idea what's going on. Okay, I think you can hear me now. Can you hear me now? Test, 1, 2, 3, test, test. Okay, you can hear me now. Okay. I have no idea what this was. Okay, let's leave the music in the background a bit. Okay, so I was on the process learning VueJS, and I have this little application here that I'm playing around with. And I learned about Nuxt some while ago. And I wanted to try it out eventually. But before doing that, let's continue with the basics, because upgrading is still possible, but learning the fundamentals is more important. Okay, so let's see where we are. So I have this little site here with different tabs. So I have a router installed. And last time we played around with the different events and event emittings. One thing that I learned in the meantime, that you can do things like this. So the main question was last time. Let me move this again. So let's say my component foobar is emitting this custom event. How in a real life application would you know, would you keep track of these events? So let me search for foobar. So yeah, the idea here was like to have like this foobar used. And then basically having here on click some kind of event handler. So let's say function alert, whatever. And then saying here, call this alert function when this event is triggered or emitted, so to say. Now the question is, if I change here the name, I have no idea here that that the name changed. So like thinking in big applications, how do you keep track of these kind of things? How do you keep track of which component might emit an event and which event and what is the name and what's happening on name change? So that's what I learned about this define emits. Which is basically a macro for declaring a component's emit events. Ah, yeah, basically it was meant to be like an array of events. So continue with options. What did I do wrong here? So like this, no? You can basically say define emits. Let me remove this type even. Declaration expected, exactly. So I could say like this. And then, yeah, what is the type of this thing here? But basically, let me change now. And you see I get a TypeScript error. Argument of type my custom click is not assignable to parameter of type my custom click. So basically now I have a mapping here. And the same also here. So if I would listen here for my custom click, I would expect that it fails. And that's probably the reason. So basically emit options is an array of strings. So we can do the same here. What is this VLS emit? Refers to a value. Type based. It basically means if I do type based, I don't need to have any kind of argument here. So this would be, the event would be my custom click. And the result would be void. What I'm doing wrong? Ah, yeah, of course. Curly brackets. Okay, this thing is not clear to me. This must be something Vue TypeScript specific. Define props. Okay, so I'm a bit lost here what this means. What does this mean? VLS emit refers to a value, but it's being used as a type here. Did you mean type of? No. Type based. Define emits. Event name, expected arguments. So the event name is my custom click, and the arguments is well, this obviously cannot work. Event name, expected arguments. Okay, I have this defined now. What is this? Powerless emit. What is this thing? Do I have to cast this? source code variable foulness emit used before its declaration. What? Well, this is a bit weird. Or I don't get it. Maybe. Go back here, emit, type-based. Let's try with this example. Oh, this is working. V3.3. Oh, let me check my view version. v3.5, so this should work. Okay. So now I have this defined. If I change this now to something else, this will fail. Nice. Okay, now here. Why is this not failing? Um, so how do I say to my parent that this my custom click actually does not exist? Like at least the autocompletion is working. So if I type add, I get this auto-completed here. But still, if I would name this to something else, I would have no idea. So within the application, within the component, everything is fine, everything is consistent, but here it's still saying foo is something, but there's nothing. Yeah, so this is still a bit unclear to me how you make this. It must be something with typing. I need to type this here properly. So I could say now here emit foo. If I would do something else, it would yell at me. But I don't have any control here. So whatever I do here, it says this exists, or at least it looks like in VS Code that this exists. It knows this thing is a void callback, but this does not even exist. How does it know? Yeah, okay, this is a little bit weird, or not completely clear to me. But at least if I go now here to my playground and I press the button, I get hello from playground view. Okay. So we learned about this, we learned about this define emits. Let's continue. Slots is probably also a very interesting one. We have learned that components can accept props, which can be the JavaScript values of any type, but how about template content? In some cases, we may want to pass a template fragment. Exactly, so you have like a button and you want to pass something in. It's like the children props in React. So in React you have children. This you can use, and here you have slots, and slots is more or less like also what is in web components. This is the same kind of concept as in web components. You also have slot constructions. So I could say, for example, that I have a slot here. And then I could say foobar, and then I have hello world here. Hello Twitch chat. And then you have this click me here. Let me give it a bit more space. Let me get rid of this crap. So now you have this click me here and hello Twitch chat, and basically the first thing is this button and the second thing is coming with this slot. Now I assume what happens if I have something inside slot, it's getting replaced, yes. So this is like a default. If I don't pass anything here, yeah, okay. So if you don't pass anything into the slot, this is the default. And if as soon as you have something here, it's getting replaced. Probably they define also this here. Should be rendered, okay. Yeah, and here they also write it that their slot mechanism is inspired by the native web component slot mechanism. So that's a native HTML web component standard, and the VueJS one is based on that one. Okay, cool. Okay, I'm back in a second, and then we continue with the provide inject mechanism. Okay, here I am again. So provide and inject. This page assumes you've already read the components basic. Yes, we did. Prop drilling. Usually when we need to pass data from the parent to a child component, we use props. However, imagine the case where we have a large component tree. Yeah, okay, I know this. So if you have a lot of nested components, you might need to pass down props all the levels. Notice, although the footer component may not care about these props at all, it still needs to declare and pass them along. Exactly, so that's the usual problem that you have in the beginning or at some point, that you have like a deeply nested component tree, and at some point you might need to define a prop somewhere and need to pass it down. Solve this drilling by provide and inject, so that's the mechanism they have. Okay. So import provide from view, provide message key value store. Okay. App level provide. Can also do this on app level and then inject data provided by an ingester component. Use inject. Inject message. Okay, it's like a store. So they build up a store out of this. Again, if not using script, then inject. Only be called synchronously inside setup. Can define some default values. Okay, working with reactivity. There may be times when we need to update the data from an injector component. In such cases, we recommend providing a function that is responsible for mutating the state. Okay, so basically you pass like in the store, you pass like an update, a setup function, and then whatever else inside component basically can use this to update the state. Okay, and you can only have read-only values, which is quite nice. How would you do this in React? Read-only. Read-only state. I'm not even sure how we would do this in React. Okay, that's something else. Yeah, I'm not even sure how to do this in React. Read-only is, this is quite nice. Okay, so this, let's use this thingy. Let me kill all this. This we don't need anymore. So this was the way how to define props, but we don't want to use define props anymore. So what was it called? Provide. Name my route. And then in foobar we could say inject. And how do we know which keys to exist? How do I know? How do I know it exists? Is there also something like define provide? No. So how do we do this in your Vue TypeScript applications? How do you define which kind of because right now it's unknown. So I could define a type here, type I don't know. Right. String. T, so injection key. So the key is of type K and the value is of type K. Extends injection key. If K extends injection key. Okay, so it's basically inferring this. Yeah, this is now TypeScript mumbo jumbo, but this is quite important to understand. What is this injection key? So like this. Yes. So first is the value and the second is the key. Okay, and then now in foobar. Yeah, how do you do this in mean, I could do something like this now. Now we learn define expose. So we need to expose the type probably. Do we? VueJS expose the type. So how do I expose a type of my view component? Okay, inject has name. Why is this not complaining? Default value is T. No, that's not what I want. What is this injection key meaning? Injection constraint. Do I need to define this? How to resolve injected instances in VueJS using TypeScript? Yes. Container. So my main question is, how do I type this in TypeScript that this component here provided this active provider here and not foo or bar or anything? Okay, active, update active. this is the key and this is the type of the value. Yeah, let's try this. So my provide so key is name. And whoopsie. And the return type, the value type is string. The fuck? Inject. Well, he also injects only with active. Alright. Where's the provide here? Ah, he didn't type it at all. Okay. No, this does not work at all. So I expect that this is undefined now. So I provide name my world, and here I try to inject something non-existing. And my main question is how do I type this correctly? Injected value undefined. Exactly. So how do I know here? Provide type name. Yeah, this is a bit of a mystery to me how to type this correctly. Danger for signatures, yes, in the first. So you notice that the first can be a string or injection key type, which has some advantages. Ah, yeah, exactly. Injection key. What is this thing? Symbol as injection key. Oh, I see. This active is still this interface. So we'll do this here. Okay. And then active key. Ah. Okay. Okay, and then define expose. Inject, and then I need the key. And the key I get from define expose. I need it. Cannot contain ECMAScript module exports. do I need to define expose? Define expose key. Where was Node.js example? Oh, they made it into a helper. Okay. Fine. Alright, let's call it like this. My playground key. Okay. And then here doing the same my playground key. Yeah, so that's probably then the way to do this. Injected value in my world. Okay, so long story short, define your provider keys as symbols in a helper, and then when you provide, use this key from that helper, and if you inject, doing the same using the key. So if the symbol is changing, it's the same for provide and inject. Yeah, this was actually helpful. I really don't like Medium anymore. It's like you cannot do anything if you're not logged in. Well, you can just tweet, but you cannot leave a comment or anything. But I will paste it also here in Slack, in the chat. This is quite helpful. Okay. So this was provide and inject. Now async components. In large applications, we may need to divide the app into smaller chunks and only load a component from the server when it's needed. To make this possible, Vue has a defined async component. source callback should be called when you have retrieved your component definition from the server. You can also call recheck to indicate the notice fade. Okay. As with normal components, async components can be registered globally using app component. This is also something I haven't completely understood so far, is the global store that Vue seems to have. Okay, so basically you can register something here in a global component registration. Or in their parent component. Okay, so you have like an async component that asynchronously loads the actual component's single file component, what we learned from last week. Okay, you can also say how much delay or what timeout you want to have. And now it goes into hydration. That's quite interesting. Okay, well, this is... Ah, actually they call this thing suspense as well as in React World. Or was it the other way around, that VueJS defined the suspense and then React was copying it over? Because in React there's also suspense. It's the same thing. So yeah, frameworks look at each other and then copy the best principles on their own framework. So that's how it goes. One framework was the first one, and then the next one was copying it over. Okay. Composables. Okay, so you have a mouse component that is doing something with mouse positions, mouse move, event, okay. Ah, these are like hooks. So you have use mouse. Okay. This is what called hooks on React World. So you can say use mouse, which is like this thing here, which returns X and Y position and has a bunch of event registrations. And then you can use it. Okay. Okay, composables are hooks for React developers. Yeah, they have to start with the word use. Or lowercase, it's the same in React World. Okay. Custom directives. Okay, directives, to recap, is basically these kind of attributes that start v dash something. Like v model, v show. You can have your own, okay. And let me guess, you have to start with the lowercase v is the name. Okay. V highlight mounted, okay. Any camera case variable that starts with a v prefix can be used as a custom directive. Okay, that's what I guessed. And this is the way if you use the options API, not the composition API. Okay. Custom directives should only be used when the desired functionality can only be achieved via direct DOM modulation. Okay. Directive hooks. A directive definition object can provide several hook functions. My directive called before launch. Okay. And then you can use them. Okay, so these are the arguments. This I understood so far. So the hooks are basically lifecycle methods, so to say. So you can have life cycles for before mount, mounted, before update, and so on. Okay, gotcha. And then basically when you define your directive, this is like a shorthand, and this will be called for mounted and updated. So it's the same as writing this with mounted and updated being the same function, so to say. Okay. Okay, so there are a couple of different things. There are React hooks, which are called composables. There are directives, custom directives, and then there are also plugins. Plugins are self-contained code that usually add app-level functionality to you. This is how we install a plugin. App options. Okay. So these are like app global wide middle layer plugins that do certain things. Okay. Transitions. Transition is a built-in component. This means it is available in any components template without having to register it. It can be used to apply enter or leave animations on elements components passed via slot. Okay, that's quite interesting. So button click toggle, and then you have this transition, and inside there, if show is true, then this paragraph will be shown. Okay, so these are then app-wide CSS classes that come with these transitions. So on enter active, enter from, enter true. These are basically definitions or CSS class that will be attached automatically by this transition, I believe. Transition only supports a single element or component as its slot content. If the content is a component, if the content is a component, the component must also have only one single root element. Okay, if the component is inserted or removed, this is what happens. Vue will automatically sniff whether the target element has CSS transitions or animations applied. If it does, a number of CSS transition classes will be added or removed. If they are listeners for JavaScript hooks, these hooks will be called at appropriate timings. If no CSS transition are detected and no JavaScript hooks are provided, blah blah, the DOM operations for insertion and removal will be executed on the browser's next animation frame. Exactly, and then there are these transition CSS classes. There are 6 classes applied for enter leave transitions. So this is for enter, enter from, enter true, and they are combined enter active, and then from, leave to, and they are combined as leave active. Okay, and these are basically the classes that are applied on these transitions, unless you gave them a name, and then they are prefixed by the name. Okay. Okay. Keep alive is a built-in component that allows us to conditionally cache component instances when dynamically switching between multiple components. Ooh. Yeah, so now here the state is reset. So if I have a count to 4 and then I go to B and then back to A, count is killed. So now if I have this with keep alive, it's keeping the state. Okay. Okay. Teleport. Yeah, this is basically like how is it in really called? Not teleport, it's like a portal, use portal. So you basically can render something outside of your actual component. So you can say, okay, I have this component that is somewhere in my DOM tree, and now I want to teleport this part to the body. This is normally, yeah, you usually do this for models and this kind of stuff. Okay. And suspend. Suspend is experimental, okay. This is like for the async components, what we just heard before. And with suspense, you can basically then say what should be the fallback, for example, showing a loading spinner and all this kind of stuff. Okay. Then TypeScript with composition API. Yeah, you have this lang ps. Four layers. Okay. Yeah, I will need to read through this offline because it's not very interesting. It's like manual work you need to do for TypeScript completeness. But I think now we have a quite a nice overview of everything. Well, I will forget half of it again tomorrow. But yeah, in many regards it's similar to React. Where I see differences is in the reusability. So you have like these composables, which are like hooks. It's the same in React. And then you have these directives which you don't have in React world. And plugins where you have as kind of middleware or something. But these directives are more or less unique to Vue, I would say. So I would guess there are basically a list of awesome Vue directives. Vue resize, a Vue directive to detect resize events of debouncing and throttling. So how do you use it? Okay, you install it and then for the module you say directives resize and then you can use it, yeah. Okay, are you using this? A lot of external directives? Vue occupy, yeah. Data content. Okay. Whatever this is. Okay, well actually, yeah, now I have a better overview of everything. And And then I would say in the next stream we will start building something fresh, because this little thing here, I mean, this little application is very boring, and there's not much more to do here. But yeah, we can build something new. So be it. Have a nice evening and see each other next time. Ciao, ciao.